My name is Bryan Radzin. I just finished the fourth. I just put out the fourth book in my Search for Truth series, and which ended up being my ninth published book. I'm very, very happy. I'm a HSU graduate. Been here since '05. Just love the area and really seem to have found my passion with the writing. It was my goal when I turned 30 to put out my first book and then do a book a year after that. And this past year was 7 years in a row, which is awesome. I feel really good about that. And I'm getting down to defining my whole process and really kind of getting into what are my most creative times, what can make those creative times or should I say my productive times. And realizing that when I'm not within those times, I can, what can I do in the rest of my life to make those productive times more productive? And that's where coming into finding how life is all interconnected comes in. And that's where coming in to that's where taking care of myself, eating right, being kind, that's where all that can actually filter in to make my writing better. I can't express how happy I am about the whole thing. I just had the idea. I've done short stories. I've written short stories all my life since I was young. In school, before college anyway. I always kind of wanted to be a broadcaster and do voice stuff, which is why this podcast thing is pretty awesome. I'm looking to get more into it for sure. But somewhere along the lines in college, I just kind of got more into the writing side of things. I graduated. My degree was journalism, creative writing. Probably would have been a strictly writing major, but Humboldt didn't give enough writing classes, so I had to do journalism, which is great. It's just, journalism wasn't really creative enough for me. Now I know day-to-day news reporting is very important. There's certain information that people have to know. It's vital to our democracy and our government and our just society in general. But it wasn't really what called me. Just wanted to give you maybe a quick overview of the books. The first few books I did were under the series title Manifesto of a Madman for Good. First book I put out when I turned 30 was 70 pages. It didn't matter how long it was, just that I put something out there and just to see if I could even write something. And they're all kind of short essays that read like journal entries dealing with all different social political subjects. And so I did that first one when I was 30. The next year I put out another Manifesto of a Madman for Good, which was basically double the length, about 180 pages. And then the year after that, I did Action Manifesto of a Madman for Good, which basically was novel length just to test my strength to see if I could write something a book length. Because, man, it is a marathon, let me tell you. It's not a sprint, not something that, you can finish in one day or two, no matter how much you try or want to. It is a marathon, and you gotta pace yourself. So, but then after that, I had the idea for the Search for Truth series, and I know some people have even brought up that it kind of sounds quasi-religious, because I think there actually is some religious titles out there under that name, and I kind of saw that in the beginning when I was choosing the titles, but it called to me for some reason. I mean, we're all searching for our personal truths, but especially in this day and age of alternative facts and fake news and everything else, there is such thing as truth, and there is such thing as facts. And if there's anything I've learned in life, that's nothing is black and white, but there is facts. I mean, the sky is blue. There's clouds. Foundations are made out of concrete, or probably other materials for all I know. But point is that there are certain things that do link us together as human beings. So that's what kind of led me back to my series, which basically follows Jason. He's a small town investigative reporter. He breaks a big story, which gets discovered by this big magazine in New York. He gets the perfect job, kind of gets thrown into the halls of power, and he's in D.C. or New York, should I say, but close to D.C. And he uncovers a scheme dealing with illegal immigration, insider trading, and the story just kind of snowballs from there. Take down a corrupt congressman. By the end of the story, they do take down the president, and I mean it's basically issues that run through all of my books. There's action, suspense, conspiracies, political intrigue. Each one kind of deals with a different subject. That first one being kind of illegal immigration and insider trading. There's also an epic love story, which of course I had to put in there. And just like any author out there, probably vicariously living through my characters, anybody who knows me will know that there's little bits of me in probably every character of my stories. But that's just how ideas come out, and all part of our process. So anyways, the first book ends, they take down the president. Excuse me. And the second book starts when they're on the run. They follow this secret postcard to Cuba. And a lot of it takes place in Cuba and deals with water issues and desalination. They build a water pipeline. I thought it was an interesting idea, just with all the oil pipelines and all the, uproar about that, which is very, needed with environmental concerns, or destruction would probably be a better way to put it. But just an idea that would take water from the ocean on the East Coast or melted snow and pipe it to the West Coast where all the droughts are going on and desalinate it immediately. Now, this is, of course, something that I don't know is technically possible, or it should be, but I guess I'm the idea guy. I'm not so much science. I'm more right-brained or left-brained, or I'm not really sure where that falls in. But I thought it was possible, thought it should be possible, and there's probably a lot more scientific and minds out there that could maybe figure out such things. So it was interesting. There's a lot of action in that one. Some suspense, obviously, but there's a few murders, and it's a pretty exciting one. The third book, or should I say, the second book, is called Search for Truth: The Next Step. The first book, of course, is Search for Truth: The Seeker Begins. Should have started with that. The third one in my series is called Search for Truth: Journey into the Abyss, and that book basically a lot of it takes place in Jerusalem. Deals with private armies and militias. And whenever I thought about private armies and militias, it always leads back to the Mossad for some reason to me. Which, I'm wearing a shirt that says Mossad on it, but found this great website for, just has all these kind of funny shirts and hats, and basically Israeli military surplus. And everything from body armor to gun parts to funny t-shirts. So there you go. But that one, that book anyways, before I get off on too much of a soapbox, was really important to me. It was really personal. I grew up Jewish, my whole side of my family, or should I say both sides of my family. My dad's mom was born in Israel or Palestine, or I guess it wasn't really a specific country yet in the 20s, just kind of Ottoman Empire and roaming tribes and city-states and stuff. But just something that really has been personal for me for a long time, that, you see there's probably not one population of people in the entire world that has been more persecuted through the generations than Jews. But that's also what goes into makes me sick these days, because then when they finally get their own land and finally get their own country, they're doing the same things to other populations and to other people, and it kind of defeats the whole purpose of, we're trying to be equal and be unifying and all of this. But if, personal opinion, you could probably draw the correlation between, they've had their very conservative leaders. The last one before Netanyahu, that was Ariel Sharon, who was the Prime Minister of Israel before Netanyahu. Him and his people that were in there, you could consider it Israel's Bush and Cheney. So they're really conservative, right-wing, just like has been in this country, has been in power for a bit and have been trending things rightwards. So a lot of those issues come into that book, and I got to use a strong voice about things I, care about and everything. So it was good. And then the book that I put out, the fourth one in the series that I put out, or came out this fall, Search for Truth, Rude Awakening, deals in the South, deals with a lot of racial issues and social engineering of people. They elect a new president who moves the capital to Alabama, and I get to talk a lot about different issues in that book. One big thing, real topic that strings through all my books are conversations, just having conversations with people. It's why my books have a lot of dialogue. I feel it's very important that we need to talk to each other more often. And it's one of the reasons I make a point of, whenever I walk down the street, I make sure I wave at random people that I don't know, because sometimes someone will look at you like you're challenging them, looking them in the eye, and they're not used to that sort of thing. Other times you could be, walking down the street or driving down the street and wave at somebody, and they look like they might have a grumpy look on, or maybe you just caught them at that right split second, but they'll smile out of nowhere. And it reminds you that humanity is still alive, that humanity still exists, that there are good people and good things that are there. And, it's great, because then that person might be, that might be the one thing that changes their day, and they could go on and, share it with somebody else they come up with, and then so on and so forth. And it's very magnetic, that good positive energy. And so that's something I certainly try to portray in all my books. One thing I wanted to bring up, at least, about this new book, A Rude Awakening, was a lot of different conversations going on in the book. But one that I felt was very important was some people that are so far off the deep end on the kind of like racist, crazy kind of deep end. Some of them might be too far gone. And maybe the ones that are almost off the edge, but just kind of teetering on it. I feel like some people are so far gone that they need to be, without it sounding weird, talked to by their own kind. And I don't mean that in any kind of racial way. I just, racist white people might need to be brought around by other white people, maybe who've seen the light, before they can deal with the population at large. So, I look at it as a spectrum. They go way over to this side with the racial, the hatred, the darkness, and everything. They need to be brought back to the middle, just back to normalcy, a normal human being, before they can really be spit the truth at and, kind of going along the lines of, equality and tolerance and all and such things. But so one big conversation I have in that book is basically, to paraphrase, old racist white guy who's seen the light and is now trying to live his life a better way and making good decisions and seeing people for their true worth and character and all that. And his nephew who hasn't yet. And so to have that conversation and those arguments, I thought was very important, because it basically shows that, no culture is monolithic. No group of people thinks the same way. And so if we really want to bring people together and unify and come back to some kind of a regular human nature, so to speak, we need to be able to talk to each other. We need to be able to see how we really agree on a lot more than we don't. I mean, I brought up a lot. I can say that we probably agree on about 90% of everything, all of us. No matter how divided we are, we probably agree on 90% of stuff. It's just this 10% of things that gets us caught up. that basically were saying, oh, well, since we don't agree on these few things over here, we can't deal with this whole huge area that we do agree. Well, part of the way, options or, methods or whatever word I could use to describe that of my writing is to show that, or should I say to try to flip that. So we start the conversations from the 90% of things we agree on. And once we're able and used to talking to each other like human beings again, like, just normal people without, preconditions or preconceptions, then maybe we have a chance at fixing a lot of these, generational and long-held differences, the other 10%, as I like to say it. So it's, a lot of things to work on in our society, and, I'm looking forward to definitely doing whatever I can to help further that along. So that's why this book, I'm also, like to say, within under 100 pages of finishing the 5th one in the series. I'm not sure, 5th one of my Search for Truth series. I'm not sure what the title's going to be yet, but it should be good. I don't want to give too much away about the story, but it basically, a lot of society breaks down, and some people, and without saying, mom being biggest cheerleader, but other friends too that have said that some of the things that I've written about, not to toot my own horn, but have come true, like the book about Cuba. Basically 6 months later, there was the embassy opened, and then a bunch of immigration stuff happened after the first one, and so there was things that, and it was funny, I actually wanted to write into the 3rd book about the president winning, but I didn't want, that was during the election, and I didn't want to skew it and make it happen. Well, we obviously know what happened with that. So the next one, obviously I knew how to put it in there, and so him moving the capital to Alabama and kind of not reigniting the Civil War, but kind of bringing up all that old stuff that used to be not buried under the covers, but just kind of right under the surface. Okay, because you change laws, but you don't change people's emotions, and when no work is done towards that, it can really mess things up. Kind of why, again, it could, almost my opinion of why Reconstruction failed, but that's a whole nother conversation. I'd love to get into that on a future episode. But anyways, not getting too far off topic. Sorry, I love to do that. I love to talk. I was also going to say the other 2 books I put out this year were collections of my Mind of Critic daily pieces that I put on my Facebook and my website. And they're basically also kind of short essays that just deal with kind of random, thoughts that I have, and just different subjects. Some of them are personal, some of them are social, political, emotional, spiritual, just all sorts of different things, kind of inspirational messages. And so I put together a collection of the first book, or a collection of all the pieces that I did in 2015 and a few in 2014, and then another collection of the ones that I did in 2016. And so that was great. I'm excited. When I first started doing the whole writing thing, that equaled my 9th book. This novel will be the 10th one, and then of course I'll also be putting out, the 2017 collection of Mind of Critic, probably end of summer, into the fall, once everything gets edited, and fixed up and cleaned and smoothed and all that. But when I first started this whole thing, I'd have conversations with my mom about, maybe I'm not as far along in life as I'd like to be, or as successful as I'd like to be, or, seeing other people my age with, without the debt, but everybody's got debt these days, more just, furthering along their life, I guess. And then, and then I have conversations with mom, with other people. And when I started, do a book every year, and I've done that 7 years in a row now. that if I turn 40 and I've written 10 books, it's bound to lead me somewhere. I'm not really sure where, but somewhere. That somewhere is into the unknown. And that's what can be scary. Going into the unknown, the darkness, kind of moving forward and not really knowing where you're going or where you're at or anything. But you're moving forward because you know it's the right thing. And that's kind of how I feel with my books. So I, am going to continue that as long as I can, of course. There might be a couple more books in the Search for Truth series. And then I got a couple other book ideas brewing, another couple series ideas, which, I guess that's every author's dream, to come up with a series, because it's endless ideas. Spend the first one or two building up background of the characters, and then you can kind of get into all the fun stuff later. Fiction is definitely where my passion lies. I really love that, coming up with whole new worlds and characters and everything. Not so much science fiction. I know that's, some people's thing, and I like science fiction. It, you get to talk about a lot of stuff that I like to say is, it's not probable, but it's not impossible, which basically means it might not have a great probability of happening, but it could. And that's where a lot of that can be very useful for people, for growth, for human social evolution, to get us to think outside of our box and outside of our bubble and our neighborhood and community. Which our community, the whole, without going back to that old, almost cliche quote of, think globally, act locally, kind of goes along with that. In that, we're all a microcosm of everything that's going on right now. We have our own issues in this community, just like any rural community. And I, like to be able to talk to people and get out there more locally and, start conversations and everything. And just talk to people. The political parties is kind of corrupt. Why do we need parties when we could just have people running on things that we all know should be done and should be talked about and enacted and all of that? So that, again, another episode. So, I try to look at life, every day is a new day. Nothing's guaranteed. They used to say that, nothing in life is guaranteed except death and taxes, except that's not always true these days. Obviously, there's major billion-dollar corporations and conglomerates, Google and Apple, just to name a few, that proudly pay no taxes at all and funnel their funds through like 6 different countries and aren't, and it's basically not illegal. So taxes aren't always guaranteed. Death, it can be prolonged. There's a medical technology. People are living a lot longer than they used to. Now, granted, the human brain isn't mapped out, and we don't live to 200 years old yet, probably because of the crap we eat and the fast food, although at least that's getting a little bit better. And, even if, the kind of fitness craze or Fitbit, all the little activity monitor things that are going on these days, if that is the thing now, it's kind of not a stereotype, but a cliche, fad, whatever. If we're a society that does that as a fad, or at least something that along those lines, and then keeps continuing and graduating from that, that's a good thing. That's not bad. I mean, the bad thing is how the centers move to the right politically, but of course, another episode. I quite get off topic very easily, so. But, so, one thing that's really helped me, especially do all the books, I can feel I'm getting better with each book, my writing. Of course, I could certainly use a professional editor one of these days. But the editing's getting better, the writing's getting better. I really love it because my mom has done the artwork for me. The on the covers, she'll do like a watercolor for the different covers, and then we put it through Photoshop so it looks like a real photo, and it's awesome because I, get to do this creative project with my mom, and it's pretty special. So I don't know, just to be able to bounce ideas off of each other and that kind of, mom son familial parent relationship, however you want to describe it, is special, is important to hang on to, because life is short, certainly be taken away at any time, whether it be, car crash, drunk driver, disease, whatever. I mean, so that's why we have to not live every day like our last, but maybe. So, and so yeah, so the books, Mom did the artwork. I on the Mind of Critic books and the Manifesto books, I also took my own photos of, I love to take photos, so many great opportunities around here, whether it be rivers and sunsets and everything else. I got to display some of my photographs, so those are on the books as well. And so, just with all those, it's continually kind of bringing me in, good energy and good vibes by just putting my truth out there and finding that even if I might be, this admittedly liberal person, that I've had very conservative people read my stuff and like what I have to say, because they see what I'm trying to do. Not like I'm trying to appeal to liberals or conservatives or anything like that. I'm trying to appeal to people. And that also goes into why there are certainly a lot of politics and that kind of thing in my books. However, I specifically left party out of it, because I didn't want to get into Democrat, Republican, Green, all this stuff, because there are liberal. Now, I do mention liberal and conservative a little bit, not a whole lot, but some. And I brought that up because there's liberal and conservative wings within each party, and so I just felt like, it was important to try to get past that, to try to move the conversation past, oh, well, what party do you support? And, oh, well, it doesn't matter that, one guy's a child molester and one, I'm going to support him anyways because he's not a Democrat, or I'm going to support this Democrat because he, fights for things I want, but, takes advantage of young girls and sends, lewd pictures to them. So obviously there's problems in both parties. But that is one of the reasons why I left them out of the book. I didn't want to get into that. I wanted to get into what makes us human and what brings us together around human issues, and to delve or drill down to that, to kind of break apart the ice and break apart the fog and get down to what's real, the meat, so to speak. Sorry to all you vegetarians out there. I didn't mean that as a cut. But so it's interesting. I guess I never pictured myself as a writer. Like I was mentioning before, I did a lot of voice stuff. Would like to continue to do voice stuff. These podcasts are fun. But the writing, and I can see a bright future, and I think that goes back into what I was saying also about, delving into the unknown, walking into the darkness. It can be scary. It can be frightening. It can be worse than anything we've ever tried to accomplish, but it doesn't have to be. Almost going back into that saying of, we can't change everything, but we can change our reactions to them. And that's what I come down to also. It's not obsessing about things and God, I think it might even be an AA line, which, the whole, give me the courage to change the things I can and to accept the things I can't, and wisdom to know the difference or something. I'm sure I totally messed that up, but it's true. We have to make sure we focus our energy on things we can do and we can accomplish. Now, how does that balance out with going into the unknown? Well, that's part of the challenge of life, and figuring that out. Some things we go into and know we have a great chance of succeeding. Other things we go into and we might not think anything would ever happen, or we'd ever succeed, or it would ever work out for the positive. But it does. And then we're surprised and we go, oh, well, geez, if I wouldn't have taken that chance or that risk, where would I be now? Well, thank you for listening to this first episode of Bryan's podcast. I don't know what else I should call it, but that's probably work for now. If you're interested, and I hope you are, in my books or any of my writings, please visit my website, www.bryanradzin.com. I don't know all my books on lulu.com. You can find that you can search the titles of the books or my name, and they should come up. And I'd love to hear any feedback on there. Also, email address is B as in boy, R as in Roger, the number 5 at humboldt.edu. I'd love to hear any feedback, any comments, anything, because I love to talk to people and I love to talk about all this kind of stuff, and any feedback or any advice, any like I said, any comments that somebody has, even if they're bad, I don't care. Just bring them to me. So that I think I look forward to doing this more of this, doing this next time. I'm sure I'll see y'all again real soon. Some will be political, some will be probably social, spiritual, emotional, personal. I'm sure it'll all run the gamut. And in the future, I would love to have some guests on my podcast here. And because I think a lot of good can come from, conversation bouncing back and forth. So hopefully we can do that. And look out for me on YouTube and bryanradzin.com. And I have, there's a lot of sample chapters on my website and things. You can check out the book. The Daily Things Minded Critic are on there. Some other random found quotes and lots of videos of past readings and things too. So hope to all see you next time.